So, I wanted to help people with what is this thing called depression? A lot of times I talk and it's confusing for people that feel like depression is something that they can't really control. So, where's the line between I have depression and it sucks and I hate it? And what can I do about it? Or can I do anything about it? And if I could do something about it, is my depression even real? So I just wanted to give my 2 cents on that because I am somebody that overcame depression, overcame bipolar disorder, and I believe that other people could do it too. I'm seeing a lot of lack of success with medication. So I like to help people find alternative ways. Even if they're using medication, there's still the internal work that needs to be done. There's no magic pill, and that's what cognitive behavioral therapy is essentially working toward as well. And I think that it's a very powerful therapy that could be improved in many ways, but is also very powerful in many ways if people are willing to do the work. But first, you have to know that if you're depressed, it's because you're having thoughts and emotions that are making you feel that way. That's what depression is. Now, you could change the way that you think and you could change the way that you feel. It's not instantaneous, but if you could change the way that you think and you could change the way that you feel, because we've all done it, then who's to say that we can't make our way out of depression? And if you've ever heard me talk about my situation, you'll know that one way I got myself out of depression is I told myself that I was going to be depressed and happy at the same time. Just like somebody that has cancer or who is terminally ill can be happy and grateful for their life, I could have the same thing with depression. So that was a new perspective for me. So I changed the way that I thought. I didn't change my depression. I still had the depression, but I wasn't like giving into this whole bullshit about I'm depressed and there's nothing I could do about it. I was like, there's something I could do about it, even if it's just like that one tiny change. That made a huge difference. So here's what I think a very helpful kind of perspective for people with either depression or anxiety, or who feel just like a victim of these kind of disorders. If you're struggling with depression right now, and I hope that you're seeing somebody for that or working with somebody who's helping you and not living in shame or living with the stigma that there's something wrong with you, because depression is so, first of all, so rampant, but also it's a I don't want to call it a disease, although it is a dis-ease. I don't want to call it but it is a disease in a way, because there's something in your mind, in your body, that's causing you to feel, what are the physical symptoms? Completely lethargic, like you're walking through quicksand is a good analogy that I usually use, or metaphor. You feel like everything is a struggle, everything's hard for you, it's hard to talk to people, Now, I think that at its core, depression is a disease of low energy, where you just feel like you don't want to do anything. I think that if I could define depression in one word, it would just be like a lack of motivation. It has other attributes, like, for example, deep emotional pain. What I think gets people really stuck is when they feel that depression and then they start internally beating themselves up or judging themselves for feeling that way. So with postpartum depression, that's one depression that I'm very, very familiar with, but in all depressions really, but let's just take that one for simplicity. You're a new mom, you have a baby, you are not feeling very successful at caring for that baby. You're exhausted. You might be sleep deprived. And what do we tell ourselves? I'm failing at this. I'm not good at this. I'm not a good mother. I hate this. All these thoughts. And those are normal thoughts. But what we do is we think the thoughts And then we like actually believe those thoughts. And we're like, oh my God, I'm thinking these thoughts. They must be true. But how many times have you thought a thought, believed the thought, and it wasn't true? Like, for example, you thought somebody was mean, insulting you and being mean to you. And then you found out later that like that person was just super stressed and was going through like their home was getting foreclosed? So what you initially interpreted was wrong. So a lot of times we can misinterpret things, but because we think that we give so much credence to our thoughts and what we think, we just believe all our thoughts. So if you're believing that like you're a new mom and you suck as a mother, or you weren't meant to be a mother, or you this is your life forever and it's never going to change. It's okay to think those thoughts and have those feelings. They're not true. Okay? So does that make sense? You can think the thoughts, you can acknowledge the thoughts, you're having those thoughts, but it doesn't mean that they're true. So what do you do, right? How do you combat, especially with, when one attribute of specifically postpartum depression, but I think really all depressions, is that we have what's called intrusive thoughts, where it's like you're being bombarded by like negative thoughts about yourself, about your life. So what can you do about that? Well, there's a part of you that is not these feelings and these thoughts. It's separate from you. It's a separate part of you. And the way that you know that is because you're seeing the thoughts. You're observing the thoughts. Now, if you could step back from those thoughts and take a perspective of curiosity about those thoughts, not allowing those thoughts to take you, but kind of almost like disassociating from those thoughts and saying like, okay, I'm having these thoughts. I'm having thoughts that I'm not good enough, that I'm a shit mom, and I was never meant to have a baby. Interesting. What else could these thoughts be? Is it possible these thoughts are not true? And you kind of adapt an attitude of like curiosity or just like observation, like you're observing the thought from an outside perspective. It takes the energy, it takes the charge out of those thoughts and feelings. This is why mindfulness is, or meditation is, where you breathe and you just kind of like observe that you're having these thoughts, you're noticing these thoughts, but you take the charge out of them, where they're not controlling you, but you're separate from them, you're disassociated from them. And one thing that you could do, it's called the ABC process, okay? Where you, take the adverse thought, A for adverse, take the adverse thought or emotion, and then you go straight to the C. What's the consequence of having these thoughts, right? Well, the consequence of having the thought that you're a shit mom is feeling like shit. Okay, do you want to feel like shit? No, you don't, right? But what's causing you to feel like shit is this thing that you're feeling. Now, bridging the adverse thought and the consequence is B. What's bridging A to C is the B, ABC. The B is the belief. What belief do you have to have that is not true to have that consequence of that adverse thought? So in order to believe that you're a shit mom, you have all these like lists of reasons. Well, I don't, play with my kids. I don't spend enough time with them. I don't have energy to take care of them. I don't, and all the beliefs that lead you to believe that you are a terrible mother, to lead to that thought, the beliefs that are underlying it, that you're not capable, that other mothers are so much more capable than you. But are those really true? Are those beliefs really true? Well, let's look at them. Let's take the belief that other moms are more capable than you. That's what's supporting this adverse thought. Well, maybe other moms like don't have the feelings that you're having, and they have just like more energy because they don't have this thing called depression, and they're not struggling with that. Okay. You're doing the best that you can with the situation that you are in. Okay. And that's true because you care. The fact that you are like torturing yourself means that you care. You care about being a good mom. Now, torturing yourself isn't going to help you be a good mom. So you got to get rid of that. It's just going to lead you deeper and deeper and deeper into the hole that is depression. So if you want to get out of that hole, torturing yourself is not the answer. So just stop that right now. Stop torturing yourself or whatever thing you're torturing yourself with. Even if you're not a mom, but you're depressed, like I speak to people who are depressed and they're like, well, I'm depressed because I don't have a husband and children. And I'm like, well, you should have been in my head when I was going through postpartum. I wished I didn't. I was telling myself that I was in handicap because of my husband and children, that I didn't have the time and the energy and the resources to have self-care because I had a husband and children. So it's like you could tell yourself anything that would make you feel disempowered. So it's an ABC process. This was came up from a doctor called Dr. Martin Siegelman. He wrote the book The Optimistic Child, and it teaches you how to have a more optimistic perspective and how pessimism causes so much depression and low energy in kids. But I just kind of applied this for adults, which he suggests that you do. For parents, who are dealing with pessimistic children or children who could use a more optimistic perspective, just kind of like analyze these thoughts and these beliefs that you have. Like, are they true? Is that really true? Are you really a shit mom? Look how much you're torturing yourself because you think that you're a shit mom, but really, like, you wouldn't. And that's kind of why we torture ourselves, because we think that if we could torture ourselves, then that means that we care. That's kind of like the benefit that we're getting from the torture that we continue to be in. But it doesn't really work that way. We think it works that way. Subconsciously, we think that if we feel guilty, that means that we care. So we could tell ourselves, look, we care so much. But really, it's just sapping your energy. It's just taking you to this place of darkness in you. And you'd be much better off giving yourself a break. Telling yourself, I do care about my kid. I do care about my baby, and I'm struggling so much and I'm trying my best. And beating myself up is just taking me deeper and deeper into depression. So that I hope that helps for anybody who's beating themselves up because they're depressed or because they're going through this. Beating yourself up, it's just a new problem. You're already dealing with depression. Don't make it worse. So that's my take on it. You can have depression, but you could also help yourself in certain ways. Help yourself by giving yourself a break and acknowledging all the things that you are doing, all the ways that you are trying, and all the ways that maybe you could have a different perspective on yourself to help yourself to feel better. Because what's the consequence of beating yourself up? It's just going deeper and deeper into emotional pain. Do you want that? No. So let's have a different outlook on ourselves. Let's come at it from a different perspective. What are we doing that we could celebrate? What are we doing that we could give ourselves credit for today? What is one small thing? Did you just get out of bed and brush your teeth? Well, I'm sure that was really hard for you. And if that's all that you could give yourself credit for today, do it. Lots of love to you guys.